everybody, Cooper Castle here, and in today's video we're gonna do something very different that we haven't done before. In today's video, we are gonna react to animated horror flicks, scary animations. This is my very first time doing it, so we're gonna react to We'll react to the first creepy animation. First, we're going to react to Creepy Night at the Office. Scary Stories Animated. Made from 1 month ago. Let's get started. Stupid ads.
Are you in this class also?
Yeah. Okay guys, let's react to it. This is their 21st animation. Animated Horror Flicks presents Creepy Night at the Office.
This creepy story happened to me about 6 months ago while I was still working at my previous job, and I thought I would share it while it still remains fresh in my mind. So I was at the office one day. I was working late and the rest of my co-workers were heading out to share a taxi home.
Okay.
So I was going to be the only one left in the building since our boss hadn't come into work for the past few days. I thought it was an interesting coincidence that he stopped showing up on Valentine's Day, but no one really knew for sure if he was seeing anyone. Although he had been coming to work on his motorcycle a lot more often lately, whatever that was supposed to mean.
Wait, pause.
I didn't really care to...
Wait guys, pause the show. Have you ever wondered if you had a boss that ever doesn't come into work? That could be scary.
Much about all the gossip, but I was getting kind of tired of the whole thing since it seemed it was all anyone could talk about at the time. The strong scent of perfume in the office and the mystery gift on his desk also had everyone talking. It was actually pretty cool not having the boss around at first, but unfortunately, the security alarm had started acting up and I needed his signature to approve the cost to call someone to fix it. Also, the key to the supply room went missing since he left, and he hadn't returned any of my messages about that or the alarm. Which was surprising because he was the kind of person that would generally take things very seriously. Just as my colleagues were about to leave the building, they asked if there was anyone waiting up for me because there was someone sitting inside a car in the parking lot outside.
Wait, what?
They seemed genuinely unnerved when I told them that I wasn't expecting anyone, and they all decided to quietly leave together and asked me to be careful. What was really strange is that whoever it was had no business being there, but I initially brushed it off and thought the car would be gone by the time I got around to observing the parking lot for myself.
Oh, okay.
About half an hour later, I received a message on my phone from Josh, one of my co-workers from earlier. Truth be told, I was so focused on my work, I had completely forgotten about the matter. I didn't respond to his message right away, but eventually I did find an excuse to pass in front of my boss's office overlooking the parking lot. I went into his office and peeked through the window. As I slowly pulled down the blinds, I was surprised to see someone still waiting in the parking lot. This was highly unusual, and it kind of creeped me out, since the car was parked so close to mine. I couldn't really make out who it was, but as I looked closer, I could see it was definitely a man smoking a cigarette. There was nothing familiar about him, and I didn't recognize the car. Since I was the only person at the office, I couldn't shake this uncanny feeling that he really was waiting up for me for some reason, and that it would be impossible to get to my car without him seeing me. I quickly returned to my desk and grabbed my phone so I could take a photo and confirm with Josh that it was the same car from before.
It's the same car.
While I waited for Josh to respond, the gift on the desk suddenly caught my eye. I thought that perhaps it was a perfume, which would explain the strong scent inside the office lately. But I was also curious to know if it really was a Valentine's gift, and why it was still on his desk. It seemed strange to leave it at the office. As I slowly opened the box, I was surprised to see a passport inside. Suddenly I received a new message on my phone.
Where did
I
the
was
driver
initially
go?
confused by his response, but when I looked closely at the photo again, I could see that the car was empty. I was so quick to take the photo I hadn't even noticed. I immediately took another peek through the window. The car was still there, but with no one inside. It seemed so strange to abandon your car in the middle of the night, especially on a cold February night.
And now it's raining.
It was getting late and I still had a few more hours of work to catch up on, so I decided to get back to it, hoping the car would be gone by the time I finished up. A few hours later, I got a little curious as to why Josh hadn't followed up with any other messages, which is when I realized that the battery on my phone was dead.
Oh shoot.
I was too tired to stick around to recharge my phone at the office, so I closed up and cautiously descended into the parking lot. As I left the building, I felt a sudden chill, but I didn't know if it was from the cold air or from seeing the same old car still parked and abandoned outside.
Oh.
A couple of things started running through my head at that point, like maybe he had too much to drink and decided to walk home, or the car was extremely low on gas. But deep down, I had a bad feeling. As I approached the abandoned car, I could see cigarette butts scattered all over the ground, everywhere, suggesting that he had been waiting for a lot longer than I thought. It seemed very bizarre to just take off after waiting for so long. I proceeded to my car and took one final look back at the office, which suddenly reminded me of the passport on the desk that I had completely forgotten to place back inside the box after getting distracted by my phone.
Oh shoot. So no.
Knowing that my boss would totally flip out if he found out that someone had been snooping around his office, I reluctantly headed back into the building. Since I had already worked so late, I really didn't want to have to wake up extra early the next morning, just to make sure I'd be the first to arrive at the office.
Dude, if you go back in there, the boss is gonna kill you. Because the boss
I proceeded
is
to
known as the CeeLo Killer.
my phone. Knowing that my boss would totally early the next morning, just to make sure I'd be the first to arrive at the office. I knew there was a chance that he wouldn't even show up the next day, but I wasn't going to risk it. I didn't bother turning the lights on because I knew my way around and I was going to be quick in and out.
Oh.
It was when I reached my boss's office that I noticed something very strange. The office chair that was previously behind the desk had been moved and both the box and the passport were missing. I had only been gone for a few minutes, so it seemed plausible that whoever it was might still be inside the building with me.
Oh
So I was quick to observe the rest of the office. Despite the intense moment of silence, I started to feel somewhat relieved to see the same old familiar office that I had grown accustomed to, and there was no other indication that anyone else was there. However, this moment of silence and relief was quickly diminished by a loud thud coming from the supply room. It sounded like something very heavy hitting the floor. As I tried to figure out what could have caused such a loud noise, I suddenly heard the sound of what appeared to be a commotion coming from behind the door. After realizing that someone was in the supply room which required a key to open it, I began to assume that it was my boss or someone else with access to the office. But as I opened the door, I saw something that I will never forget and continues to haunt my darkest dreams.
Wait, what is it? What is it? A dead body!
My
It's a
knee-jerk
woman!
reaction caused me to dash out of the office and immediately get to my car.
Oh, here
Just as I was about to turn on the ignition, I instinctively looked up and saw the dark silhouette of a man standing by the same window in the office. I couldn't see a face, but I knew I was being watched. I turned the key and my heart sank as the engine failed to start. I tried again repeatedly before looking up at the office again, horrified to see that the dark figure had vanished.
Oh no, is he coming for you? Oh no, hurry! Hurry! He's right there! He's right there!
I gave the key one last turn, and to my relief the engine shuddered to a start.
Go, he's right
I drove
there!
off and headed to the nearest police station.
Phew!
When I arrived there, I told them everything. Thanks to the photo I had taken of the car that was parked outside, along with the partial description of the driver, the police were able to make an arrest, and the driver was identified.
Okay, what is
Shockingly, it turned out not to be my boss after all,
it? Wait,
but a
what?
relative of his with a violent criminal record.
Wait, what?
Apparently, my boss wanted to surprise his young girlfriend with a trip to Brazil by inviting her to his office and gifting her with a brand new passport he had arranged. But instead, she wanted to break the whole thing off, and in a fit of desperate rage, he killed her in cold blood and went into hiding.
Whoa! So
In an attempt to
that
cover up
was
his
the
crime,
dead
he
body in
convinced
the
his neighbor
closet?
brother to come by the office to collect the body and dispose of it.
Oh, so her
I will never
brother.
forget that
So
night.
the boss's
All the
brother was
days I could
helping
smell her
the boss
perfume as
help
the
her.
lifeless body remained hidden behind the door while I went about my daily job.
That
And the
was his
terrifying
girl.
thought of being alone at night in the office with a violent criminal, I can only imagine what may have occurred had I not left the building. or drove away soon enough.
You
I
would
consider
got,
myself very lucky.
you would got killed by that. Oh, there's the boss. He's creepy. Now he finds out that he was snooping around his office. Okay, I think wait, music.
I never saw my boss again after that. In fact, no one did.
Wait, what?
He became a ghost. His last known location was somewhere in Rio, and that was it.
Oh, okay.
A few weeks later, I quit my job and started working security at the sub-level of a local hospital.
Oh, okay.
It kind of felt like a step back, and I had serious reservations about working so close to the morgue.
Okay.
But I didn't think anything could be worse than that creepy night at the office.
I love this music. Darn it. Oh wait, there's another. Wait, that's the same one. He's working the night shift. Let's watch that. Here, let's watch that one. The night shift. Okay, guys. Next animation, the night shift. Ads, I think. Yep, ads. Do you hate ads, guys? They're super annoying. Okay, this is their 20th episode. Animated Horror Flicks presents what? What's it called? It's just called The Night Shift. I thought he said. Wait, is this the same guy? Please, please be the same guy.
I don't usually hold back when it comes to talking about my job, which was working security at the sub-level of a local hospital.
Yes, it's the same guy.
You'd be surprised to know how common break-ins were at that place, which usually ended up being a couple of junkies trying to get high on some of the weird chemicals that were being kept in the labs.
When his boss was haunted. And that's
It
him,
started
as
out
a
as a
security
regular
guard.
graveyard shift at work, but I'll lead in with a curious backstory regarding the doors that led to the morgue. In order to keep the place more sanitized, they had recently installed sliding doors that would automatically open if someone passed in front of them,
And closed if
thus
someone
removing
goes
the need to touch any
inside.
handles or doorknobs,
Okay.
and prevent anyone from leaving the doors
When is
open
the
by
scary?
accident.
When is the scary part gonna happen?
Hygiene played a major role at that morgue, and it had been on the agenda for the past few months.
Okay.
There wasn't anything really unique about the sliding doors, except for the fact that they would sometimes open and close by themselves.
What?
That by itself didn't seem like such a big deal, since this could have been caused by something small such as a moth flying in front of the sensor. Until one night, I realized that it would always happen at the same time. Every night, at exactly 3 a.m., the doors would open for a few seconds and then close.
Oh, that's
I was convinced that the doors had been programmed with some kind of time-based trigger, but when I contacted the company that installed the doors, they told me that it wasn't possible since the doors were designed only to open when the sensors were triggered or forced open manually. So it continued without any explanation for a long time after that and became sort of a ritual for me and my co-workers to watch the doors open and close on the monitors every night. Usually there would be at least 2 guards on duty, but that night I ended up working the graveyard shift by myself because the other security guard suddenly became ill and there wasn't enough time to find a temp who could fill in at such short notice.
Okay.
Just to be clear, I had been working as a security guard for a long time, so I was no stranger to danger and I wasn't worried about working alone at night. Besides, the work was pretty straightforward. All I had to do is make sure all the doors were locked and secured and keep a close eye on the monitors. There were only 2 cameras, one overlooking the control room and another one at the other end of the corridor overlooking the entrance to the morgue. As the clock approached 3 a.m., I did what all the guards on duty would do: sit back and enjoy the show. Although the novelty of seeing this phenomenon had long worn off, it was still something I would anticipate and would often give me the chills, seeing how it was the entrance to the morgue and that you could sense a sudden rush of cold air every time the doors would open, even from the other end of the corridor. I watched patiently as the doors opened, followed by the howling rush of cold air that could be heard from under the door.
That is creepy.
It was when I glanced away from the door and looked to the monitors that I noticed something strange.
What?
The doors remained open.
What?
At first I thought it might be a glitch with the monitor, and I was simply looking at a frozen frame. But then I saw the lights flicker.
Oh, we're not looking at frozen screen at all.
I waited for a few minutes, but it soon became clear that I would have to head on down to the end of the corridor, since it was strictly prohibited for the doors to the morgue to remain open.
Oh.
As I stepped out into the corridor, I acknowledged a significant drop in temperature, which I knew was going to get considerably worse as I approached the morgue.
Okay.
I gradually made my way down the corridor and turned the corner that ultimately led me to the sliding doors.
Okay.
I had hoped that the doors might have closed by the time I got there, but just as I had seen on the monitor, the doors were in fact still open and the camera was functioning normally. I tried waving my hands in front of the sensor, but to no avail. The doors would not budge.
Oh, what? So this is weird.
I reluctantly contemplated my next option, which was to test the sensors from the other side, requiring me to enter the morgue.
No,
But I
that's where the
decided to
dead
take a look
bodies.
around first to see if I could observe anything out of the ordinary.
No, that's where the dead bodies are.
Only when I turned my back to observe the corridor did the doors finally close, which was quickly accompanied by a cold chill in the air.
Oh, wait, what?
I could feel an overwhelming sense of someone standing right behind me as the hairs on the back of my neck began to spike.
What? Look behind you.
But it turned out to be more of the same eerie silence as before. Since the doors had already closed without having to actually enter the morgue, I considered myself fortunate and hurried back to the control room to make sure nothing else was out of place. I closed the door and locked it from the inside, and for a moment I was expecting it to be business as usual as I sat back down in front of the monitors.
Okay.
But after taking a quick sip of my coffee, I realized the coffee was stone cold.
What?
Not just lukewarm as you would expect, but genuinely chilled. I hadn't been away from the desk for that long, so it didn't make much sense at all.
Weird.
But then I remembered that I had felt that same chill before, at the other end of that corridor.
Oh no. What?
Out of curiosity, I decided to rewind the security footage back to when I approached the doors to see if I could spot anything out of the ordinary. Which is when I witnessed something that I simply couldn't explain.
What is it? What is it?
There was a girl standing in front of the doors behind me.
What?
I couldn't really make out her face due to her long black hair. That was a stark contrast to the white gown she was wearing. She just stood there staring right at me and then walked towards the exit. To this day, I can't explain it, because I had just been there and I hadn't seen anyone. It was when I checked the other camera overlooking the entrance to the control room that really sent a chill down my spine
What is
and
it?
still gives me nightmares to this day.
The girl! Huh? Wait, is that it? Oh wait, the door is open, but we're still alive. That's good. But where's the girl?
When the lights came back on, it was as if nothing happened. The door to the control room was open despite being locked from the inside just
Yeah,
moments
because we still
before.
up like the game Five Nights at
Due to the
Freddy's.
mysterious power surge, most of the data on the drives had been completely corrupted. But some of the security footage did survive, and I've been holding on to it ever since. I guess now would be the time to ask yourselves,
What?
do you believe in ghosts?
Yes, I do believe in ghosts because I'm a ghost hunter and I make horror movies. Out of the plushies. Oh, it's on music again.
Hey, folks, if you want to see the
Oh,
footage
that
from the
was it.
camera
Come
overlooking the entrance to
on.
the control room, please...
Well, guys, we're not. Wait, he said that he's gonna make another film, but this time we are going to get we're gonna go inside the control room. Yeah, because this was made like in Easter. Today, the final one that we're gonna react to is the Subway. The Subway was made like 3 weeks ago, so let's get started with reloading. This was part of YouTube. Animated Horror Flicks presents what? The Subway. That's a creepy way to mean.
Now, this is a creepy story that I don't usually talk about. It happened to me quite a while ago, so I probably won't remember all of the details. But I will never forget the strange experience that took place at a nearby subway station, which drove a sinister wedge between me, my friends, and my family.
Okay.
I was around 22 years of age at the time, and and I had just started taking music lessons in the evenings. I was at a stage where I was still trying to figure things out and get used to life in the big city. I remember that the lessons finished a lot later than usual that day for some reason, so it was already well past 11 at night by the time I got to the subway after grabbing a bite to eat, which meant that the circulation of trains was few and far between.
Okay.
As I anxiously waited for the signature sound of a distant train, I observed the platform and was surprised to see how abandoned it was. I had taken the subway at unsocial hours before, but I had never seen it as empty as it was that night.
Okay.
It was very quiet and there was no one else around. At least that's what I thought, until I noticed someone standing behind one of the columns near the edge of the platform.
Whoa, I see it.
I leaned forward to get a better look, but it almost felt like the stranger was intentionally trying to avoid being seen, so I just looked straight ahead and minded my own business. But the silence didn't last long after that. Suddenly I could hear the sound of someone whistling. It appeared to come from all directions, and there was something about it that made me feel uneasy, but luckily it was soon overshadowed by the sound of a train fast approaching.
Phew, good.
As I prepared to embark on the train, I was surprised to see a well-dressed man step out from behind the column.
Was that the guy
and
behind
walk
the
to the
thing
edge of the
again?
platform.
Oh yeah, that
I
is.
felt relieved to see that it wasn't some thug or potential troublemaker, yet still, something was strangely off about him, and he
What?
seemed somewhat gaunt. It always made me feel a little nervous to see someone standing so close to the edge of the platform, even when it was a stranger, but I suspected he was just as anxious to get to his destination as I was. Midnight was close upon us, after all. He stood there, very still, and hadn't acknowledged my presence whatsoever, until he slowly started turning his head towards me. With eyes wide open, he greeted
Ew,
me
that's
with a creepy grin
disgusting.
and an unsettling
Ew.
stare.
Ew, that's disgusting.
I made a conscious effort to ignore him, staring at me like that, but then he employed a sinister laugh.
His eyes,
that gave me a
wait, that's the
persistent chill,
train lights.
which was then followed by something that still horrifies me to this day.
What is it? Come on, what is it? Oh my gosh!
As he fell
He killed
directly into the
himself!
path of the arriving train, I rushed to try to save him, but it was too late.
Oh, come
It
on!
took me a few seconds to grasp what I had just seen, and I was still in shock when I hurried to the nearest ticket booth to get help, which resulted in an entire shutdown of the subway. The subway employees inspected both the track and the train, but they didn't find any evidence of a body or even a single drop of blood. After
What?
checking the tunnels, their attention shifted to me, and the tone of the whole situation took a drastic turn for the worse. I implored them to check the cameras to prove that I wasn't lying, but when they reviewed the footage, there was no sign of the man, just me running towards an oncoming train.
Wait, what? Wait, it must have been the guy, it must have been to the side, but you recorded him instead, trying to save him. That is why.
They told my parents what happened, and rumors spread very quickly after that. As a devoted Catholic, my mother never looked at me the same way again,
Oh, come
and my
on.
father
Aaron
just
Brown
put on a
is-
brave face. When that happened,
It wasn't me
the
that
truth
was trying
didn't really
to
matter that much
that
anymore,
we're trying to kill ourselves. Somebody
and life sort of
was
carried
trying
on
to kill
without ever really going back to
themselves,
normal.
but I tried to save him, then I just stepped back and fell.
I left home the same year and moved into a shabby old apartment downtown.
They were their parents.
Needless to say, commuting around the city never felt quite the same after that,
Come
and I
on.
still find myself staring at the ceiling every night, contemplating the truth about what I witnessed that fateful day at the subway.
There's the man. He's still alive. And he's laughing. Oh, there's the music again.
Hey folks, thanks so much for watching until the end of this video. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already and smashing that like button if you enjoyed this animated horror story. It helps a lot and guarantees more animated content from my channel.
Oh, what happened? Is that us? Yeah, that's us. Like, I swear that we didn't do it. I didn't jump. Somebody else did. I just still wonder, where could that man be? And what was that whistle? It could be the same guy or somebody else. Oh no! part 1. And today, in the next episode, we're gonna
Hard, but your money's working hard for someone else.
We're gonna
Get
react to
more
more
from your
scary
money at a
animations
credit
on
union,
Animated
where our
Horror
profits
Flicks
go
5.
straight back to you. Open your eyes to a credit union.